You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So we've all heard about meat getting more expensive. Do you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, a bunch of meat plants got shut down and meat prices just kind of went crazy, and we were afraid we weren't going to have bacon, and just catastrophe in the meat market. Well, beef has gotten more expensive. And so the Biden administration is placing a $1 billion bet, $1 billion with a B, to make beef cheaper. Now, this is government intervention. Going to reduce pricing in an open market. That sounds like a real thing, right? Yeah. So when will prices fall? That is the question of the hour, is it not? When's this going to have a positive impact in the marketplace? Meaning more competition, lower those prices, all that good stuff. When's that going to happen? You're just going to have to tune in and stick with me here for a little bit, and we'll find out. All right. Before we jump on in, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies. I am a recent COVID Omicron survivor. How's that? And I read the news. All right. Let's jump on in. We're reading from CNN Business because you might as well get it right from the source, right? Right? The White House on Monday offered a solution to surging meat prices, an action plan that includes investing $1 billion of American Rescue Plan funds to boost competition in the industry, and promises to ramp up regulation and enforcement of anti-competition laws. Nothing opens up an industry like enforcement and regulation, does it? No. But some experts say that the move is unlikely to offer relief at the grocery store right away. Don't worry, inflation is transitory. But this change here, it's going to take a long time. Not immediate, long term, maybe medium term. We'll get those prices down, but we're going to spend $1 billion doing it. Let's just see what $1 billion of you, the taxpayers' money, is going towards. Does this make any sense at all? Well, the Biden administration's investment, which includes grants, loans, money for training, new labeling rules, that's important, right? You got to label that stuff right. Otherwise, it's just going to be expensive. And ways for farmers to report anti-competitive concerns. Tell on your competitors. That is literally what we're talking about spending money on. Report anti-competitive concerns. Don't you kind of know when there's anti-competition in your industry? Isn't it just kind of, this is the reason this industry is the way it is. It's not like you have to point it out. It's just there. But no, we're going to provide some more ways for farmers to tattle on each other. That seems like that's a reasonable plan, right? And that's all designed to spark competition in the meat processing industry, which is dominated by a small number of massive companies, which tells me this stuff will not work. How about that? How about just right there we go with that? The White House, however, argues that the concentration in the sector is chiefly responsible for higher prices for consumers. More competition will lead to lower prices, according to the administration. Yeah, but if you're talking about entering in some very small entry-level players into an industry dominated by a few big players, good luck with that is all I can say as far as expecting a price reduction down the road at the grocery store for said beef. It's just not going to happen. This is spending $1 billion of your and my money on some stuff that doesn't make any sense. That's what's going on here. That's my opinion. If you think that it's going to have a great impact, and if you're really if you're going to go vegan until these prices drop, you might be vegan for a long time. I'm just throwing that out there. If you're already vegan and you say, good, I don't care if my meat prices go sky high, that's fair too. Not everybody has to eat beef. But I think it's really good. I think it's tasty. I enjoy beef. As I get older, I consume less and less of it because I feel kind of sluggish for a day or two after. But sometimes white meat just won't do. you got to go with the red meat. You really do. Like beef in spaghetti sauce. I mean, that tastes really good. Yeah, you could put in some fat-free turkey, but it's just not the same. And a really big like T-bone steak, I mean, you can't go wrong there, right? I'm not saying to eat it every other meal or eat it for every meal, but now and then, beef, it's what's for dinner. So the big meat processors, by virtue of little competition, have more market power to name their price, a senior White House official told CNN Business. All right, where did they come up with that little nugget of information? Don't know, don't care. Because most White House officials, they don't really know anything, right? That's why they're White House officials. Skeptics say that the proposed solution may be too simplistic and is unlikely to reduce prices, at least in the near term. It's not going to reduce prices at all. It's just not. Hey, you need to narc on your neighbor. They're not following the anti-competition demands, and therefore we need to tattletale on them. We need you to tattletale on them. Labor challenges and high demand. It's true that the vast majority of the meat processing market is controlled by just a few players, but that's been the case for decades, said James Mitchell, he's an assistant professor in the Department of Agriculture, the University of Arkansas. So it's been about the same for the last 20 years, he said, arguing that consumers would have noticed price spikes well before 2020 if the highly concentrated industry was to blame. So what we're saying right here at the get-go is that competition isn't to blame for these prices going sky high. However, we can throw out to the public, this is what we're doing to fix this. We're going to spend $1 billion. And the public just goes, okay, all right. And then they go check at the grocery store, a year later, and they're like, oh, we were lied to. We were lied to. Where'd our money go? Yeah, it went into labeling. Look at what you got for your $1 billion. You got some new labeling. Labeling, it's important. Others, including the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, echoed that sentiment. So the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is saying, hey, if it was as simple as adding more competition to the mix, then I think you would have noticed this issue beforehand. And this has really only been an issue since COVID, right? And we had a bunch of factors there that just squeezed the supply and prices went through the roof. Instead, Mitchell said, recent price spikes are largely the result of the same pressures contributing to inflation in other sectors, namely labor shortages and supply chain issues. Beef prices in November were up 20.9% from a year earlier, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. I wonder how much they're up over the beginning of the pandemic, November of 2019. That would be interesting. It's pandemic-induced labor challenges. It's pandemic-induced logistical supply chain management issues, Mitchell said. The recipients of the White House investment are still going to face the same labor issues, he added. Interesting. So basically, the same dynamics that caused this price increase, you're still going to have those after you add some more things that are going to increase competition. And you're going to have better labels. Don't forget that. And you're going to be able to tattletale on your competitors who may or may not be following said anti-competition protocol. So that's not necessarily going to change or fix the cost issue that the consumers are facing at the grocery store. That's really the issue here, right? Prices are high. Government says they're going to do something to bring them down. Consumer is going to go to the store and go, when's this going to happen? Well, it's probably not. Labor remains the biggest challenge, Sarah Little, spokeswoman for the North America Meat Institute. I did not know there was such a thing, but apparently there is. And it's a trade group that represents meat and poultry processors. She said in an email, our members of all sizes cannot operate at capacity because they cannot employ a long-term, stable workforce. There you go. There's your issue. Higher demand has also led to higher prices, so it's getting squeezed. I mean, it's just like every other commodity that's had this happen to it. Well, we can't get enough of it into the marketplace. Therefore, the existing supply has increased pricing. The price increases are the result of exceptional demand for meat at home during the effects of COVID, he said. On top of that, COVID restrictions at plants, increased social distancing, prep measures, and safety protocols since COVID are slowing the line speeds as well as increasing the costs for meat processors and contributing to higher prices on shelves. So we're not really diving into that at all, are we? I mean, so those issues, how could that be solved by spending a little bit of money? The socially distanced measures and the safety protocols, could those be taken off? Yeah, but they're never going to be, right? I mean, with Rona still lurking, it's lurking out there. You might get the Omicron, like somebody I know, and you might get pretty sick. And yeah, don't do it. If you have the option, don't do it. So, slowing the line speed. So we're talking about production. You don't have enough labor capacity. And with the existing safety protocols with COVID restrictions, you just can't produce as much. So no matter how much labeling, no matter how many grants and all this other good stuff out of the $1 billion that you spend, you still got the same fundamental underlying demand and supply thing, right? Getting a little more competition in there, you're still going to be working on increased social distancing measures and safety protocols. Same thing. Industry, that doesn't change, right? I don't think we're going to change any of that stuff anytime soon. And even if you do, how long is it going to take to get some more production in the system to actually balance what's going on? How long is that going to take? Probably a while. But that's the market just kind of coming to its own equilibrium, right? Right now, you've got a government who basically doesn't understand business, who thinks that you can monkey with it. Maybe they don't even think that. They're just kind of going under the impression, well, if we spend this $1 billion, we'll have some good talking points and we'll be able to take claim for when prices do ease up a little bit, if ever. Spec says that if demand stays elevated, it could take well into 2023 for prices to normalize. And what does normalize mean? That's something we hear a lot, right? Does that mean stabilize at their current price levels? Probably. So we're spending $1 billion. Our price is going to come down? No, probably not. They're going to kind of stabilize, and we won't have the increasing price levels continuously like we've had since the beginning of the Rona, because you've got a basic supply and demand issue, right? A highly concentrated industry. That's our next section here. Some welcome the White House's intervention. I don't think government should be intervening in this stuff at all. I just don't. I'm a hands-off kind of guy. Just no, because every time the government steps in, they screw it up. Industry consolidation has had a significant negative impact on rural America, Scott Blubaugh, president of the Oklahoma Farmers Union, said in a statement. He added that he hopes the move will help provide a more level playing field. Okay. So you've had industry consolidation, meaning you used to have a bunch of small, let's call it farmers or meat producers. And now you've got fewer, but those are the dynamics throughout food industries in general, right? You don't have small players becoming big players. You have big players becoming even bigger players. That's how that industry is gone. So you throw $1 billion at that. Is that going to provide a more level playing field? I think the intentions are there, but the gross reality of it is no, probably not. Changes to the industry will take time, Blubaugh told CNN Business, adding that he thinks the move will lower the prices eventually. Now, this is what people who believe this is going to have a positive impact are saying. Well, it'll lower prices eventually. Oh, maybe, I hope. I mean, I can't say that I'm going to lower prices immediately because we all know that's not true. And we can't say that they're going to lower prices like midterm because we know that's probably not true either. So eventually you might see a little bit of return for your $1 billion spent, but more than likely, probably not. Overall, he called the White House plan a game changer. All right. That's ridiculous. Is this a game changer? It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like it's $1 billion of money spent, taxpayer money, on stuff that's maybe going to have a little bit of an impact long term. But that's not what people are looking for right now. People are looking for short-term solutions to long-term problems. Here we go. It's a game changer. But others say that it's not clear that more money will lead to a more competitive industry. It's an interesting point, isn't it? Yeah, I would probably say, yep. I've done some research about this, trying to find out how markets will perform if there is what I call an intervention by the government, said Azzedine Azam, professor of agricultural economics at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So this is a professor, not somebody who actually runs a business, but, they think about this stuff and they read about this stuff pretty often. So what did he find out? Azam found that investments that go to meat processors really are not going to make that much difference. Given the high concentration in the industry, it's going to have zero impact. That's the bottom line. Here's $1 billion that's just a waste of time and money and effort and money and your money and my money. It's a waste of $1 billion. The government's actions will help in the medium term, said the senior White House official. All right, define medium term. Define that. Because when that happens, people are going to be like, oh, yeah, remember when beef was just cheaper? And they're just going to be, they're going to be used to paying, the moon for their meat. And they're just going to be at a point where like, yeah, red meat, really expensive. Because we're not going to see a price reduction. Is it the case it will take a little bit of time for smaller and growing processors that we aim to help gain market share? Yes, that's clearly the case. So you are hoping that you can help some smaller and growing processors create more supply for the overall market in general, when we've actually just, clearly identified the market is run by a couple of big players. So how does this work in reality? I'm all for small businesses and I'm all for small players having equal footing. But what we're talking about is spending $1 billion on said footing to get the smaller guys in there so that they can compete. But you've got mechanics that just don't really work, that aren't really going to work, and ultimately aren't really going to work at reducing the cost of beef at the grocery store for you and I. Not happening. So I'm a real estate guy. I am not an agriculture guy. I'm not a food guy. I'm not a red meat guy. I'm not a, chicken guy. Not any of those. But the basic concepts we've got going on here just kind of show an underlying lack of any ability to identify business in general. Because if you read through this and if you come up with a different way that you're going to quantify this $1 billion being spent towards an actual increase in the supply of red meat, therefore a drop in pricing. If you can come up with that from this article, more power to you. Let me know how you got from point A to point B, because I'm a real estate guy and I'm here sitting here going, all right, so what are we getting again? Let's just revise just for a review. What we're getting, well, some grants, loans, money for training. Oh, we needed some money for training. I mean, we've already got beef coming to the marketplace, right? Do we really need money for training? Maybe it's the new systems that we're going to bring in, the tattle on your neighbor's, farm. Maybe we've got some, money for training for that. Some new labeling rules. I mean, that just screams productivity, doesn't it? Some new labeling rules. All right. We're going to really kick out the cows now. And ways for farmers to report anti-competitive concerns. Okay, but we already know that the industry is dominated by a handful of big producers. So that's already identified. So are we going to tattletale on those, or are we tattletaling on the smaller producers? It's really unclear. And this is all designed to spark a competition in the meat processing industry. Yeah. I'm a hard no-go on this one, folks. Hard no-go. This does not make sense. And when I first saw the storyline come out, I was like, I just cringe every time the government says they're going to pump some money into a system that clearly needs it because people are complaining about expensive consumer products. That's the bottom line here. That's what's going on. People are pissed off that they're going to the grocery store and it's costing too much damn money to buy their red meat, their beef. That's what's going on. So we need to be able to point at something. Look what they're doing. Your pricing is going to come down, maybe a midterm plan, definitely long term if you can live long enough. Nah, none of this makes any sense. And I don't think it takes being an associate professor of something agriculture at something school to kind of figure that out. These are, this is not that tricky. Yet it's what we're doing. And we just spent an entire podcast on it, right? Kind of pointing out the obvious of what's going on here, which is we're spending $1 billion so that we can talk about the impact that we're going to have down the road, either medium term or long term. Again, if you live long enough, because maybe in 30 years, this will somehow, labeling things, changing up the labeling rules. Maybe 30 years from now, things are going to be cheaper. I probably wouldn't wager a bet on that. Yeah. I'd probably go with beef is just going to continue to be expensive. Maybe not go up at the same price levels as it has been. But this is one of the, food, gas. I just did a podcast on used cars. The used cars numbers are crazy. And these all go to that component of inflation, one way or the other, that America is kind of staring down the barrel of and being told, it's okay, it's transitory. And yet it doesn't really feel that way. It's the way I see it. All right. Thanks again for being here. We just covered the meat industry $1 billion infusion program. Labeling. Don't forget labeling. Critical for greater output and increasing competition. You got to have the right labels. Whew. Crazy, right? Okay. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for being part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I'll catch up with you soon. We'll talk again. Till then, stay safe. Bye for now.